music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Paul and Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steve Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts flow.
Hello and welcome to the Punch Show. If you were here yesterday, you missed a lot of fun. And hopefully today there will be even more fun because fun is what we do here. This is, I wasn't even going to do a show today, but just more feedback on this whole issue of gun control. And so I've been doing some research. I promised people, they asked, well, what do you propose for a solution? And they challenged me and pushed back on a couple of things. So, I did my due diligence and I did some real research and I looked into what the actual numbers were and I have answers. So today I don't know how long I'm going to spend, but I do want to show you that I am taking feedback even from the people I disagree with and trying to give honest, thought out answers. And so I have an answer for gun control. At least I think it's an answer. I've thought it through pretty well. I've done some research. Maybe there's some things wrong with it, but I've anticipated pushback and tried to steel man that pushback as best I could so that I could come with honest responses that I think if you really give me a chance to hear me out, then maybe you would at least agree this is a starting point for something we can look at and consider. So let's just start going through this. I've got a dashboard I'm going to share with you that talks about what some of the facts are. If I'm on the dashboard and I don't see your comment, it's not that I'm ignoring your comment. It's just that I don't see your comment because I'm on the dashboard. So don't get offended. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the dashboard. Hi. I'm actually 5'7", but all right. So I know it was a joke on my part. I got your joke. Okay. So this is my solution. Let's make responsible gun owners responsible for the guns they own. It's that simple. Not talking about taking away anybody's gun that's not a danger to society and doesn't have a right to one. I'm not talking about taking away anybody's gun. In fact, if you will hear me out and let me get to my solution, I think it would actually make it easier for you to get a gun if you're a law-abiding citizen. So just hear me out. But at first, I want to answer a couple of questions that were there was some debate yesterday. The first thing I want to look at is how do criminals actually get their guns, right? Because I think that's a fair question. So there's like some surveys they do with people that, had guns that are convicted felons and ask them how they got them. 43% get them from the underground market. And the underground market is not like a literal underground market. And it's not like on TV where, like they know a guy that knows a guy and, they go and they stand on the street corner and one guy's got a trench coat and the other guy has got a couple of Benjamins and then he buys a gun and folds it up and stuff like that. That's not really how it works. It's more, your cousin knows a guy that's selling a gun, and you go to his house, and he's like not a gun seller. He just happens to be selling his gun or something like that. There's family and friends. They get them through straw purchases. Some of them steal them. Some of them just found them, or they found them on the scene. Okay. But altogether, this composes 92% of the guns that are used in, 78% of crime guns came directly from the legal gun owners knowingly transferring them through the underground market, family, friend, or straw purchases. So it's like the original owner was legally purchased it, but then they transferred it to somebody else, and they knew they were selling it. Like it wasn't like it was stolen or something like that. So when they're selling it to a criminal or something like that, then there's no real penalty for it. And we'll get to that in the next section. But right now, I'm just reviewing what the facts are in terms of how people get guns that shouldn't have them. And 78% of the time, they're gotten by people who could have them. This is what I mean by make responsible gun owners responsible for the guns they own. There are some that are stolen, 266,000. And so we need to look at all these guns that are stolen. Why aren't we doing anything about it? Like, as a society, why aren't we trying to find these stolen guns? Why, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. 66,500 of the stolen guns every year never get reported to the police. I know there were some people yesterday that was saying that that's against the law. It's not in most states. I think it's 33. I think I might have it down there. It's not against the law to not report a stolen gun in 33 of 50 states. There are some states where it is, and we'll get into it in a minute. But most of the states it is illegal. There's not really any teeth to the law that makes it illegal. And that's one of the things that I want to review here is there's no, like, some of these things where people are like, just enforce the laws we have. But it's like there's no enforcement mechanism. And we'll get to that later too. But 92% of the crimes that are committed by guns, the guns aren't with the person that bought them. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, people that commit crimes, they didn't go to, and clear a gun check and then go use that gun for a crime. They came through somebody else, and that person through whom they came got them legally through a gun store or something like that. Almost all guns, unless they're stolen from the manufacturer or something, or stolen from a gun store, almost all guns were purchased initially by someone legally, and then they were transferred to somebody else. Like Fred bought them and sold them to Bob, and then Bob sold them to Claude, and Claude committed a crime. Fred didn't do anything wrong, and whether or not Bob did Bob know that Claude was going to commit a crime? Should he have known if Claude was going to commit a crime? So we want to look at how we can close those loopholes. Not trying to say Bob or Fred shouldn't have guns. I'm saying that Bob and Fred should be responsible to make sure they're not selling people guns that aren't felons. And yes, if Claude's a felon, it's illegal to buy him a gun, for him to buy a gun. But you're then asking the criminal to be the one that is responsible for upholding the law. always in the TV. Yeah. I don't know why it's always that way. Oh, yep. So anyway, just looking at this, there is an issue, right? Like people are buying guns legally, and even legally bought guns end up in the hands of criminals. So I just want to look at how do they get there, right? How do they get in the hands of criminals? And mainly they come through the underground market, they come through families and friends, they come through straw purchases. Some of them steal them, some of them found at the scene. So how can we keep that from happening? Like the where do we problem solve? You know, like when you're trying to figure out what went wrong and you keep going back one step, right? And you try to find where is the issue at? The issue is not at the point of sale. The issue is not at the initial point of sale. And the crime is in the end user has it, right? But in between, how did that gun go from the person who could legally own it to the person who didn't legally own it? And how could that person have prevented the criminal from getting the gun, right? It's not the government's job at that point. It's actually the gun owner's job to keep the criminal from having the gun. Make the responsible gun owner responsible for the gun they own. That's what I want to say. And how does that happen? All right. So first, let's establish right now, they're not responsible because they're not accountable. Most of these guns that make this transition, this is like actually, I had a lot of pushback from this from some MAGA faithful yesterday. But I just want to point out the numbers. Last year, or I'm sorry, was it last year? I think it was last year. There were 112,000 people denied gun purchase because they lied on forms. Of those 112,000, 12 were prosecuted. One of them was Hunter Biden. But typically, lying on your gun, purchase is illegal. For people that straw purchase is when you knowingly buy a gun that you're just going to then turn around and sell to somebody else. You have no intention of actually owning the gun yourself. You know that they can't buy a gun, so you buy it and then you sell it to them, or you buy it for them. There are an estimated 50,000 estimated straw purchases annually. Of those, only 1,500, only about 3 to 4% get prosecuted at all, right? And of those that get prosecuted, almost all of them get charged down to lesser offenses. It's almost impossible to go to prison for a straw purchase. It happens, but it happens in the dozens. Out of over 50,000 straw purchases a year, only a handful of people actually go to prison over it. This is what I mean when I say there is toothless laws. You can say, well, it's against the law to do that. But when, like, one guy got 45 days in prison and he had 40 counts, got convicted of 40 counts, and he spent 45 days in jail over it. All right. That's not a thing that has teeth. How much money, did he make off of that? If there's no teeth, for people that, like want to talk about the death penalty for so many things and talk about blowing up boats, this law is toothless. All right. So I think that we need to have more serious enforcement of straw man laws. And I think we need to have more serious penalties for straw man laws. Like, if you do it, like a year minimum in prison or something like that, like actually have a deterrent. And for each count, you got to do a year. Because then people stop doing it. The idea is not just you can punish people or whatever. And you say, well, you can't, laws aren't going to change the criminals. why have the, we talk about deterrence and other things. Why not a deterrent in this? So, like, really make it punitive to buy guns for a felon, especially if there's a good chance that you know that they're going to shoot somebody. The longest prison sentence I could find for a straw man purchase was 3 years for somebody that bought a gun for gang leaders that were then used in like multiple counts of homicide, which to me, in a case like that, you should be charged with an accessory to murder. But that guy got 3.5 years in prison. So this is what there's just, it's utterly toothless. Let's put some teeth in that legislation. It's not changing the law. It's just giving teeth to the law we have. All right. So stolen gun reporting laws. Right now, there are 17 states that have a mandatory stolen gun reporting laws. Of those, there aren't really anybody that's gone to prison for it. And typically it's just like a $7,500 fine if you didn't report your gun stolen. And then what was it? Let's go back up here. 7% or no, 6% of the guns that are used in crimes are reported stolen. So let's put some teeth in that. And I'll get to you in a minute how I think we can handle that to where that starts to have some teeth to it without infringing on anybody's rights. Nothing I say here will remotely infringe on anybody's rights. But these are of the states that have it. New York had 11 arraignments last year, and their typical outcome was a $100 fine. Illinois has one. They had fewer than 10 arrests. Most of those were $75 to $90 fines. Connecticut had 19 charges filed, 0 convictions, and in Rhode Island, 4 charges and average of $90 fine. So, like, altogether, for all the gun thefts last year, there was like, even of the people that didn't report them, there was like a couple of $1,000s in fines. All told, combined. Like, again, we need to put teeth in laws, and we need to make gun owners responsible for the guns they own. It's not taking the guns away from responsible gun owners. If you can't be responsible for the gun you own, you're not a responsible gun owner. All right? Current law requires prosecutors to prove knowing intent, nearly impossible. When they sell a gun to somebody, they have to know that it's going to be used for a crime. So, it makes it easy to give a wink and a nod and say, yeah, what, plausible deniability is everything, right? And so that's why it's so hard to prosecute. But I've got a solution to that. Gun owners face virtually no consequence for arming criminals, whether through straw purchases, unreported losses, or negligent transfers. All right, so this is my solution. All right, and I know the first thing you're going to think of if you're a gun owner and you're like terrified of a federal database, just sit on that. I've got the answer to that. All right, so my solution is you have an annual background check. Some people are going to say, well, that's a cost and blah, blah, blah. You have an annual cost on your car. You have to pay registration every year. There's no reason we can't have a regular background check. And then you just have to renew that license. Then what you do is if you want to go buy a gun, you can just you have an ID number on your little ID thing. You don't even have to show it to anybody. Go to buy a gun for, Fred goes to buy Bob's gun. And so then Bob just logs onto his computer or pulls out his phone or whatever, and he just enters Fred's background ID. And same thing can happen at the gun store. Same thing can happen anywhere. Anytime you purchase a gun, you just give them your background ID, they punch it in, and then it comes back in a couple of minutes and it shows the picture of the person who's buying the gun and like 2 security questions just to make sure it's them. All right. If they answer both questions correctly and you can visually confirm it's the same person, then you both sign an e-document confirming that the gun is being sold by you to them. Then that gun immediately becomes registered to that person. All right. So then they are responsible for that gun. You're not responsible for that gun anymore because you are not the gun owner. Like, you're only responsible for the guns you own. Then they own that gun. They are responsible for it. So that way, any gun we have the number for, we can immediately track and know who owns it. All right. Which, if that gun's not being used in a crime, will never be an issue. So if you're a responsible gun owner, you never have to worry about anything to do with the federal government having your ID. And I've got more safety stuff, to cover you with the database. All right. But when you sell the gun, both people sign saying that the gun is being sold, and then that new person becomes responsible for the gun. If the gun is stolen, then you have 48 hours to report it stolen, or a week. I'm not quite sure on the time frame, but you have a certain amount of time to report it stolen. And as long as you report it within that time frame that it is stolen, then you're not accountable for anything. But you have to routinely check your gun and keep it secured. Like, you have to keep it in a drug safe or have it locked up or on your person. And you have to keep that gun secured. If you're like not maintaining responsibility for your gun and making sure it's still in the gun safe every once in a while, you're not being responsible for the gun you own. So if the gun is gone for like 2 years and you don't know it, you are not a responsible gun owner. So you should be held responsible for that gun that you own if it is used in a crime, for not having reported it stolen. So as soon as you notice it's stolen, you have to report it. You put the number in the database, boom, you're not responsible for that gun anymore. We don't know where it is. That's fine. It's not your responsibility at that point. Responsible gun owners should be responsible for the gun they own. But if we put some teeth into the law that says you have to report it stolen, then that starts to matter, right? Like, maybe you have to do 30 days in jail, or maybe if your gun is used in a crime and you didn't report it stolen, you're civilly responsible. You can be sued for that gun being used in the crime for not reporting it stolen. You have to be accountable if you want to be responsible, right? You can't just say, oh, my gun was stolen, because then that's just giving everybody a back door, right? You can just give your gun away. You can sell it. You can, straw man sell it. You can do whatever you want. And it was stolen, right? No stolen gun loophole here. If you're going to be responsible gun owner, be responsible for the gun you own. Okay. So we have the annual background license. We have an annual transfer system. We have a mandatory theft reporting. We have strict criminal liability. If you, if the gun that you use that is registered to you is used in a crime, you can go to prison for it, because you're responsible for that gun. And too many people just want, like, you want to say it's not about the guns, it's about the people. Okay, what about the people that own the guns? Shouldn't people that own the guns be responsible for the guns that they own? I think so. So, and nothing here, nothing, not a single thing I've said, if you haven't noticed, actually conflicts with the single right you have. Okay, so if your gun is used illegally and it's your gun, then you are responsible for that. Now, the last thing that people are going to say is, what about the privacy? Like, I know that there's people that are all up in arms that, like, we can't have a federal database of guns because then the government's going to come for our guns and all that stuff. So here's how we get around that. Here's how we don't have to worry about that. We have an encrypted database. It's maintained by a department that is not like the DOJ. It's more like like its own agency, like the FCC or whatever. It is an independent agency that oversees this database. In order to find out who owns a gun, you need the registration number or the name of the person that you're looking to see if they own the gun. And you have to have a judicial warrant to access that database. And then you can only get that gun or that person. Like, you can't just do an open look on, show me everybody that has a gun in the country. You have to, like, one entry per warrant. So to get every single gun owner, you would have to sit there and just be typing for like 400 hours, and you'd have to have a judge signing off on all of them. So it'd be impossible to access all of that. It would be encrypted and maintained by a separate agency, so that, like, it would be hacker proof and everything like that. But then if that gun is used, we could immediately access who that gun owner is and figure out what went on. So it actually helped as a crime fighting mechanism without endangering anybody's rights. There's nothing in my solution here, nothing in my proposal that actually makes it harder for gun owners. In fact, because you already have that license, you don't have to wait 3 days if you want to go buy a new gun. You can just go get one. You can buy a gun on the spot anytime you want. So and the other thing is, if somebody is, like, let's say that they get a stalking or they get a restraining order because they've been abusing their spouse, and they already have a background license, you could immediately pull that background license. So if they wanted to go and get a gun to murder their wife with, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it from a straw purchase. They couldn't do it from a gun store. They couldn't do it with anybody. Even though yesterday they could have bought a gun, today they can't buy a gun. As soon as that gets pulled, it's immediately in the system. This is relevant because there were, like, a number of cases last year, like in the I can't remember how many. Forgot to thought that there's this thing called the Charleston loophole. I thought I had that in here. I think I forgot to put it. But the Charleston loophole is, if the 3 days elapse and after 3 days you don't have an answer, the gun owner can, the gun store can legally sell you the gun. You don't have to wait until it's done. And a significant number, like almost 300,000 people last year, acquired guns that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to buy if the background check had been completed. And of those, like 2/3 of them would have failed if the background check had been completed. So that's a thing that needs to be closed. But if we had the background license thing, then everything could be taken care of immediately. Okay, so we've got some comments here. Okay. No, I don't think people are killing themselves simply because they have access to guns, and I don't deny mental health issues. First of all, what I think you're referring to is I am saying that because people uh, kill themselves using guns does not mean they are any less dead. And denying people that are suicidal guns actually saves lives. You're the one that's denying that mental health issues. If you're thinking that giving them guns is going to make those mental health issues go away. Um, I there are cases like there was I want to say an Air Force base in Michigan where I want to say it's in Michigan. It had a high suicide rate among the security police. It was like one of those really cold and dreary and dark places. And so they had this really high security rate, and the security officers were taking their handguns home with them. And then they changed the policy to say that they couldn't take the guns home with them. And if you do any serious study and research into people who take their own lives, it's usually like a pretty spontaneous decision. It's not like sometimes it's premeditated, but most of the time it's a spur of the moment decision. And so what they found out is when they changed the policy so that you couldn't take your gun home and you had that nice easy way to take your own life, when you took that away from them, the suicide rates almost bottomed out. Like they went from one of the highest suicide rates in the entire military of any base in the military to like just not having them. So yes, I think that people who kill themselves by guns are still going to die, and I think that preventing them from having guns can save lives. I also think that this is not relevant to the conversation we're having right now, which is people using guns in crimes, unless you want to consider suicide attempt a crime. Nobody cares, Grandpa. You realize if you punish people for getting their guns stolen, they will not report themselves. No, this is the opposite. I am saying you're not punishing people for getting their guns stolen. You're punishing people for not reporting their guns are stolen. You're incentivizing them to report their guns stolen. You're literally rambling to no one. Okay, I've got 130 listeners right now. Is it just you? Is it just that you do? Is this just what you do to feel smart? What's the use in speaking to an empty void? Are you like you're here? Okay, all your evidence is anecdotal. No, it's not. I actually just presented a whole bunch of very objective statistical data. It's relevant because you cite a gun death that includes suicide. No, it's not. Because I'm not talking about gun deaths right now. I'm talking about people that commit crimes using guns. Gun deaths is a whole different source. And by the way, like, okay, there are 45,000 gun deaths a year. All the gun deaths, every single gun death, all 45,000 of them, whether it was caused by somebody else or caused by themselves, they involved guns and death. Like those two things are the only two things that are relevant. Number one. Number two, you're dismissing suicides by guns as something we need to take care of. Why does it matter whether they shot somebody else or somebody else shot them? Or if they shot themselves? Why does it matter who did the shooting? The gun is still accessible. The gun still makes the death happen. Like, well, their access to the gun makes the death happen. It doesn't matter. And number three, if it's only 23,000 people that are murdered every year by guns, that's still 23,000 people. Like, you're like saying, oh, well, only half, like, so what? You're getting like all ginned up about the suicide thing as though that proves something wrong, other than you don't care about people that commit suicide. Okay. Yeah, I listened to you yesterday asking the same question. Problem is you don't want to accept the answer. I'm not asking any questions. Are you talking to inner person over there? Maybe you're talking to inner person. But yeah, like suicides are bad. I have friends that have taken their own life and it makes me sad. One of them by gun. Like, this is just such a weird position to take. Like, somehow gun deaths that involve suicide shouldn't count. Like, what kind of, like, what's the humanity in that? 23,000 out of, no. Okay, first of all, there aren't 400 million people. There's 320 million. Secondly, 23,000 out of 420. We have a murder rate 10 times higher than UK or Japan. 23,000 people is a lot. If you want to say 23,000 is negligible, why is that negligible and 75,000 isn't? It's not like that statistically big of a difference against the 320 million. But you're ready to go start a war with Venezuela. If you take guns away, people will jump in front of trains. I have a friend that died by jumping in front of a train too. Stop using suicide as some sort of deflection. Yes, people will find ways to commit suicide if they're really committed to it. But when you take guns away, suicide rates drop. All right, so let's go back to this. All right. I mean, like, let's just really, law abiding, my solution does not have any negative impact on any law abiding citizen that wants to own a gun. You could still own whatever gun you wanted, and you could get it whenever you wanted. All you would have to do is just abide by the law. That's it. If the argument is, like, you're a law-abiding citizen, you should be able to have a gun, I 100% agree with you. And this actually makes it easier for you to get one if you want one. Because you could do it on the spot. No 3-day waiting list. But what it does do is everybody else, like the idea, like all these arguments are, let's keep the hands out of criminals. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to go in and figure out a way to keep the hands out of the criminals. And by doing this, every time a gun is sold, instantly you have a background check. And that background check has an instant result and tells you whether or not that person can buy the gun. That's it. It just, and if your gun gets stolen, you have a permissible amount of time to identify that. It puts on you the onus of keeping track of your gun and making sure it's still there. Like, if it's in a gun safe, all you have to do is just pop in there once a week and make sure it's still in the gun safe. One day you open up your safe, the gun's not there. You go, oh no, my gun's not there. You call the police. You say, my gun is stolen. I don't know when. I looked at it last Wednesday and it was there. Now it's Tuesday and it's not. And so, you reported it stolen. You're no longer responsible for that gun. But it avoids people just being able to claim their gun was stolen when they gave it to a guy that said that they were going to go shoot their wife with it. Okay, so all right, you just deflect whenever you haven't gotten me in a corner, and I haven't deflected. You just ignore what I say in response to you. When you take guns away, you reduce the suicide rate. That is a fact. You're bringing up suicides as though that means, like, if somehow somebody commits suicide by gun, that it means they're less dead, or it's like not honest to use that. I'm saying directly, if they shoot themselves in the head and they're dead, they still shot themselves in the head and they're dead. That's not a deflection. You won't acknowledge that. You're the one deflecting. You're deflecting by calling me a deflecting. You're deflecting by saying you got me in a corner. You're just saying stuff. Dude, there are so many guns sold illegally in the black market. Okay, do you think the black market is like black market mart? What is the black market? The whole point of the ID is to eliminate the black market. Every single gun that is bought initially is bought legally. And so it makes sure that every transaction subsequent to that gun is a legal transaction. And that as soon as that transaction is made, the person who bought it is now the legal owner of it. The whole purpose of this is to eliminate the black market. So yes, I am trying to solve the problem you are talking about. That is why I am talking about it. Yesterday, everybody's like, oh, well, what's your solution? So I come to you today with a solution, and nobody's like, just, you don't want solutions. And you don't even identify why you don't want one. Like, if you're a responsible gun owner, what do you have to worry about? Why is it that everything has to be an argument? Why can't we have a conversation where we're actually looking for solutions? I tried to come to you with a solution. Can you consider what I'm saying instead of just knee-jerk reflexively saying, but this? That's not an anecdote. I don't even know what anecdote you're talking about. I'm bringing statistics here. No, the majority of gun deaths are not suicides, and it still doesn't matter. Like, why are you so stuck on the suicide thing? You will never be able to eliminate the black. You can, okay. Now we're back into the thing we were in yesterday, where it's like, unless you're like, okay, you're never going to be able to eliminate illegal immigration entirely. Should we do anything about illegal immigration? There's too many undocumented people in the street. Why can't you understand that? Do you see how that sounds? These arguments that, like, oh, unless you stop this crime entirely, there's no point in trying to stop this crime, is a dumb argument. The fact that it's ubiquitous, the fact that that is the case, means we are not doing enough. That means we need to do more than we are doing. It does not mean that we should just throw our hands in the air and say, oh no, there's nothing we can do. One thing we can do is, if you are carrying around an unregistered gun, we confiscate the gun. You go to jail for it. We make it so that the laws about carrying unregistered guns have teeth. And then you're eliminating the criminals and you're eliminating the guns. And you're not doing anything to law-abiding citizens that have legally owned guns. I don't know what two different arguments means. My view on illegal immigration is that we should make it easier to get in legally and harder to get in illegally. I think there's, in general, I think we need to change our immigration laws so that people can migrate legally more easily here. And I think that we need to make it so that more diverse people can make it legally here. And not just for the immigrants, but also for the people that are here. Like farmers, for instance, that can't afford to uh, have workers come over on an H-2A visa. If we could have migrant farmers come over here legally without costing the farmers $7,000 per worker. But in general, I wouldn't say I disagree with you. I think we do. As far as harder to get in illegally, I think you probably underestimate how hard it is to get in illegally. A lot of the times people are saying that people came in here illegally. Some of them sneak over the border, but most of the, when you talk about, like some of the numbers that people like Elon Musk use or Donald Trump, they're made up numbers. They're not real numbers. There are about 11 million at most, like the high end of actual legitimate estimates for people that are here illegally is about 11 million. Of those, I think it was, and that includes people that are undocumented and people that are, like snuck over the border, and that includes everyone. Period. It's not just, like people that were over here under Joe Biden. Like they talk about like 30 million people came over under Joe Biden and they're all stealing our jobs now and all that. I think one thing that gets conflated is a lot of numbers get bounced around that are not true. One of the ways they do that is they count encounters as a border, as like somebody that's over here illegally, which is bogus. They also sometimes will count people that came over here, turned themselves in to request asylum, which is the legal way to request asylum. And then they call those people illegal because they don't have like visas or something. They don't have documents. So they're technically undocumented, but they're not technically illegal because what they did is illegal. But sometimes they get conflated with people that are illegal. So undocumented and illegal don't actually mean the same thing. But MAGA's not very good at nuance. We should be able to agree about that, no? I think, and I think we should be able to agree like this on this, because to frame it the way that you did, I think we should make it easier for legal gun owners to have guns, and I think we should make it harder for illegal gun owners to have guns. Same logic. Make it easier for people that are law-abiding to get guns. Make it harder for people who are not law-abiding to get guns. And the way we do that is not to like just beef up the laws against criminals. It's to put the onus of abiding the law on the law-abiding people. So the reason that I'm talking about this licensing and selling it and transferring it is because you, as the legal gun owner, are then responsible for the gun. And so when you sell the gun, then what happens, and I just close this out now. When you sell the gun, what happens is you're responsible for that. Like you're the one that goes on, but you're the responsible party. You're the legal gun owner doing it. And so it's not the felon comes in and he says, I want to buy your gun, and you say, okay, you haven't committed any crimes, have you? And he says, no. And you're like, okay, here, give me my $50 or $100 or whatever you're selling your gun for. And he says, thanks, buddy. And then he goes out and he shoots his ex-wife with it. The difference is he comes in, he says, I want to buy a gun. You say, okay, great. Can I see your ID? And he tells you what his ID number is. You punch in the number and you look at your phone, you look at him and you're like, you know, you don't look like this guy. Because this guy is a 5'3" blonde woman, and you're a 6'4" brown-haired man. So then he says, "Okay, you got me," or it does look like him, and then you're like, "Okay," or it kind of looks like him, and you run the security check, and he says, you ask him the security questions, and he gets them right. You sell him the guns. The onus for the law is on the seller, not the buyer. Right now, what we have is a secondhand system where the onus of following the law is on the buyer. Like we make it's illegal to buy a gun secondhand that you shouldn't be able to buy. It's not illegal to sell it, not by federal law. It's illegal to knowingly sell it, but it's not illegal to unknowingly sell it. And that unknowingly leaves a lot of gray area. And that's why I was pointing out only 12 people were convicted of that last year. Only 12. It's very rare for people to be convicted of selling felons guns, even though 93.7% of them or 92% of them are well, I guess no, 6% are stolen. So 86% are bought, but they're not bought from gun owners or from gun stores. They're not bought from federally approved gun stores where you have to buy to clear a background license. 86% of guns that are used in crimes are obtained that way. So the idea is to take that 86% and reduce that number. When we reduce that number, we reduce the number of guns that are being used in crimes. It wouldn't matter how many guns there are on the streets if the guns on the streets are all in the hands of legal gun owners. Do you have a chance to think about the AI and the implications of AI Jesus on increasingly more secure West? I don't even know what that means. If he doesn't benefit the geriatric politicians, it doesn't happen. Yeah, I think that there is a sad amount of truth to that. Especially the Republicans. The Republicans try to block any kind of gun legislation there is. And like I said, I think most people would agree that criminals shouldn't have guns. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't think most people would agree that that Republicans should have guns. I'm sorry. I don't have a problem with that. Was I don't think most people should agree. A Freudian slip there. I don't think most people would agree that criminals should have guns, but I just thought Republican politicians, criminals got all conflated in my head. Most people should agree that criminals should not have guns. All I'm talking about is how can we keep the guns out of criminals' hands? And the way to do that is not to just say, well, we just need criminals to go on the honor system, which is what we have right now. Effectively, every time a criminal buys a gun, there's no real reason for the seller to not sell it to them, because they can always just pretend that they didn't know that they were selling it to a criminal. So let's put teeth in that law, and let's put a mechanism in that law where we shift the ownership in that transaction from the buyer to the seller. Because the one thing we know about the seller is that they are law-abiding citizens because they bought the gun and they had to clear a background check in order to get the gun. And they have to have kept one maintained in order to keep the gun. Like, it's that simple. That is a law-abiding citizen. We know that. And so we're putting the onus in that transaction on the law-abiding citizen. And if we're going to do that effectively, we also need to put the responsibility on the law-abiding citizen. And does that make sense? Like, anyway. Yes, there are laws on the books regarding straw purchases. I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but I went over that. Those are very rarely prosecuted. I'll go back up for you and we'll go over this again since you weren't here. The actual numbers, this is, like when people say that all I have is anecdotes, this is the actual numbers. There's an estimated 50,000 straw purchases every year. Only 1,500 of those on average get prosecuted. Of those 1,500, very few of them actually end up in prison sentences or end up in prison sentences which don't act as a adequate deterrent. So like there was a guy that sold over 40 guns through straw purchases to gangs. That person ended up doing 45 days in jail, not 45 years, not 45 months, 45 days. Most of the time it gets pleaded down, and it's like very few people that get convicted of it end up doing any time at all in prison. If they do any time at all, most of the time it's just under house arrest. There's very little deterrent to doing straw purchases, and there's actually a pretty good incentive because, especially if you're doing it for the right people, there can be a lot of money in it. So, yes, there are laws on the books, but this is one of those things where I'm saying we need to put teeth in those laws. I like my firearms the same way California likes its citizens. Undocumented. Ha 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 ha. Oh ha. Oh, that was a riot. That was a riot. Okay. Well, you're a funny guy, Free Cali. But this is, if you want to have a cavalier attitude about guns, then don't complain about criminals having guns. If you want to talk about undocumented people and you want to talk about undocumented guns in the same breath, then you should be like for undocumented people. Because the way that you the way you limit undocumented people is through legislation and through regulation. It's the diaper breath defending sex traffickers, of course. Okay, I don't know how I did any of that. Though I do think that's a pretty good description of Donald Trump. I agree with that, but putting more laws on the books, I'm sorry. I agree with that, but putting more laws on the books that affect legal gun owners isn't the answer. But this doesn't affect any legal gun owners. It actually, like I said, all it does for legal gun owners is make it easier for them to get guns. Because all they have to do is go and just give their ID and they get a gun. It actually makes it easier for gun owners. Doesn't hinder them at all. You want to buy a gun? Go buy a gun. It just makes it harder for criminals to get guns. That's all it does. Makes it easier for, like, do you agree that making it you talked about, like, your position on immigration is it should be easier for people to immigrate legally and harder for people to immigrate illegally. So I'm saying the same thing should be true for guns. It should be easier to buy them legally, it should be harder to buy them illegally. But right now, we have a system where it's actually easier to buy them illegally than it is to buy them legally. It is easier to buy a gun illegally than it is to buy one legally. Like, think about that. Like, we can talk all we want about the gun laws we have, but if that's the reality of the gun laws we have, the gun laws we have are broken. And that's why we have 45,000 shootings every year, whether it's somebody shooting themselves or somebody else shooting them. And that's why we have 23,000 people every year murdered by guns. Because it's easier to buy a gun illegally than it is to buy one legally. Let's make it easier to buy them legally, harder to buy them illegally. This dude is okay. I do what? Okay, you're doing the whole thing about wearing. Would you please tell me what I've said that's not true? Go ahead. Like, you keep, like, you were doing this yesterday, and I'll share this dashboard in the chat here. You can go ahead and you can look at it, and you can tell me what in there is not true. Because everything is true. Is tonight the night we grind some dungeons, Kelly? I have never played World of Warcraft. Click the three buttons. I don't know. How do you make G? I don't know what G is. Then name one thing I said that's false. You talk a lot and you say little. Okay, stop fighting with people, Kelly. We can discuss. I'm going to have to try to play World of Warcraft just for you. How do you make purchasing illegal firearms harder? Well, that's what I just went through. We may, I don't, were you not here when I went through the whole thing? The idea is that you get a background ID card, and that every time anybody buys a gun, you type in the number for their background ID, you confirm that they can legally purchase a gun, and then you sell them the gun if you can confirm it. If you can't confirm it, you can't sell them the gun. It's illegal to sell them the gun. All we're doing is shifting the legal onus from the criminal to the lawful gun owner. We make it illegal to sell a gun without confirming that they are a legal gun owner. Will it be a perfect solution? Will it stop all illegal gun owners, gun purchases? No, but it will definitely have an impact. Okay, somebody breaks into my home and steals my legal. Yes, that's already been covered. That's already been covered. Like, don't come an hour in and start asking questions as though they haven't been answered. If somebody breaks into your house and steals your gun, then you have 24 to 48 hours to, report it stolen, and then you're not responsible for that gun anymore. And it could be a week, could be 2 weeks. The time frame is something that can be debated. But this again goes to, if you are a responsible gun owner, be responsible for your guns. Keep them in a gun safe. And every once in a while, check on the guns to make sure they're still there. If they're not there, call and report them stolen. Boom. But that does two things. One is it makes the legal gun owners actually make sure that they're keeping up with their guns. And so it's not like, oh, that was like, I don't know what happened to that. I haven't seen that in 2 years. It makes them responsible for it. Number two, it keeps people from just lying. It keeps people from just selling their guns and saying that it was stolen when it wasn't stolen, after it got used in a crime. I actually disagree with a lot of what you say, but you remind me of my dad, so I can't be mean. That's why I just bring up World of Warcraft, so I avoid being mean. Well, your dad sounds like a nice guy. So how are people purchasing guns illegally? I already went through that, dude. Again, in the first hour, I went over that. Here, let me show you. These are the ways that people are getting guns illegally. 43% are getting them on the underground market. 25% are getting them from family and friends. 10% are getting them through straw purchases. 6% are stealing them. 7% of them are, finding them or getting them on the crime scene. All of these things, every single one of these all of these guns were initially purchased by somebody legally. So if you make it so that every time that gun changes hands, you make sure that it's not being transferred to a criminal, then criminals stop purchasing guns. When the feds come to check on your guns, remember. Okay, so I talked about this too with the feds thing, that this would be an independent database owned or like that's maintained by an independent agency. It could be like mandatory, both parties involved, and like a 3-2 split with a 5 person membership, and the whole system would be encrypted. You would only be able to access one person's or gun at a time. Like and each one would require a federal warrant signed off on by a judge. So you couldn't get like the federal government coming and crashing down on everybody who owns a gun's house. So and the only thing, like when you enter somebody's number to sell it, that doesn't give you any personal data other than it just confirms who they are. If you outlaw guns, only guns, like nobody's talking about outlawing guns. So I would not be talking about how to legally buy and sell guns if I was talking about outlawing guns. It doesn't, I mean, some of this is just like, it's not even facts are irrelevant to MAGA. It's thought. Like I think that only law-abiding citizens should be able to legally buy guns. And then you got Duck Dog 04496 saying, why do you want to outlaw guns? Then go ahead and do it. If you think that's the answer, then why are you so worried about buying guns? Just use your little shotgun out of a nail and 2 pieces of pipe. So you're okay with Doge having access? No. Because Doge is not at all what I'm talking about. I'm okay with the Social Security Administration having my Social Security number. Well, we're into the trans arguments now. ATF can already come to people's houses wearing. Okay. Then we're not talking about changing anything. You trust the government. Are you bleeping why do you trust the Social Security office? Well, because they send my wife her disability check. Why do you test a convicted felon? Turning in your guns. Who's talking about turning in your guns? Like, you guys are just like falling back on your traditional, talking points here. I'm trying to find you said yesterday, everybody asked, what's the solution? So I came up with a solution that actually makes it easier for you. Makes it easier for gun owners and addresses what you said was the big concern, is that criminals have guns. And I have yet to see anybody actually respond to the actual suggestion. If you want to say it's stupid, if you want to say it's why it's stupid, then go ahead. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. And the Aussies. What about the Aussies? Are you talking to Skippy? Yeah. The Aussies didn't have a mass shooting for 30 years. And then they had one. 15 people died. How many have we had in the last 30 years? How's not turning in all our guns working out for us? I'm not saying we should, but let's not take one mass shooting in Australia on the same day that we had a mass shooting here in America as though that somehow proves a point. No, he was convicted. He was convicted. The jury said he's guilty. That's not misinformation. That's a fact. I don't know what I think. Are you like one of those people that says until all the appeals are heard, he's not convicted or something? I just want to say there are a lot of people in prison right now that have appeals that are convicted felons. Oh. So, okay, we've got a racist problem right here. Always got to go into the racism. All right. We're not showing any more. Once you start showing racist comments, I stopped displaying your comments and responding to them. Okay. So, anyway, facts are not racist, but you are. The knowledge of how to make firearms is everywhere. Are you gonna? Yeah. Okay. But yeah. No, I'm not going to. If everybody is sitting there and they're making their own firearms, that's a problem that we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But this is just, oh, well, somebody could create their own nuclear bomb, so let's give everybody nuclear bombs. Like, I live in Illinois I live in a state in Illinois where the state banned all of assault rifles that previously owned. You could keep yours, but had to register them with the state police. Most people told government to pound sand. Okay. What percent of the guns used in Chicago are bought in Indiana? What did I say? I'm not gonna. I can dispute what you said with logic, but you are clearly immune to that. Um, all right. Does anybody actually want to talk about the subject, or does everybody just want to scream their favorite NRA talking points? All right, this guy's done. I can't stand racist arguments. We already have law. Yes, I know you. It sounds like you're just coming here. We already have laws in the books in regards to home manufacturing of firearms, and it comes down to personal use versus sale. Oh, okay. You're talking about other something else. My point is, blue state, Illinois, keep putting up more laws on legal gun owners. Yeah, I know that's your point. My point is, people have cars. That's why my point is, like, I think we address this the wrong way. I think one, it's all state by state, where it's not national, and so it's easy enough for people to circumvent state laws by just driving to another state. I'm not sure what the current percentage is, but the last I checked, like 50% of the guns used in Chicago gang life were actually purchased in Indiana. They have gangs where they have people that live in Indiana, like gang members that live in Indiana and go to college and stuff, and their whole part in the gang is to buy guns and sell them. They buy guns in Indiana, and then they give them to the gang members in Chicago. Like, and there was one of them that got convicted of straw purchasing. He got 45 days in jail for selling 40 guns. Like, this is what I mean when I say, like, there's straw purchases, there's ways around the laws. This is why we need to shift our strategy and make the responsible gun owners responsible for the guns they own. And we need to make this a federal approach rather than a state by state approach, because state laws can be circumvented if you have a car. Yes, that's my whole point, Doug. So let's keep the guns out of criminals. That's my entire point. I'm like saying circles are round, and you're like saying, oh yeah, circles are round. Like, that's my point. Let's keep the hands out of criminals. Like, make it harder for them to get guns. I am not making an anti-gun argument. I am making an anti-criminal having gun argument. It's funny that Pritzker family owns a gun range one state over and allows AR. I don't know anything about that. I don't know what that means, or can't comment on it. And it's not really relevant to the discussion anyway. Like, I'm not talking about AR-15s or gun ranges or anything like that. All I'm talking about is, let's figure out a way to keep criminals from having guns. Majority of illegal firearms are traceable to states with lax firearms. Right. And like I was saying earlier, 92% of guns that are used in crimes are not used by the person that initially bought them. But 100% of the guns that are used in crimes were initially bought legally. Like, so that means, like, you think about that. If you could make it so that the people who bought the guns legally only sold them legally, by that I mean actually sold them to people who could buy them legally, then 100% of the guns would be bought legally. And you'd get rid of 92% of the guns that are bought by criminals. If we got rid of 92% of the guns that are bought by criminals, don't you think that we could reduce the crime rate? And we could, like, make a dent? Yes. Would there still be ways to get around it? Yes. But we could make a dent in it. And even if people would say, oh, well, you can still get them on the black market. To a point, yes. But it's not like the black market is like a shopping mall people go to. And it's not like the black market isn't price driven. Like, study after study shows, when you tighten up the gun laws that keep criminals from getting guns, the price of black market guns goes up. And when the price of black market guns up, gun violence goes down because people can't afford those guns anymore. We're not talking about anything to do with taking away the legal rights of people to own guns. And I'm not even talking right now about what kind of gun you can own. I'm just talking about you being responsible as a gun owner for the guns you own. Does anybody want to say gun owners should not be responsible for the guns they own? Yes, I agree. Absolutely, Jess. That's the only thing that matters. Responsible gun owners should be able to have guns. Criminals shouldn't. Yes, there is a federal law from banning. How many times do I need to say? You've been here while I've said this multiple times, and it's not charged. That's the thing. There are less than 400 cases, I think, of people being prosecuted for trying to buy a gun illegally. It's actually really rare, and there's even fewer that are prosecuted for trying to sell a gun illegally. And when it is prosecuted, like there were 125 cases last year for people that tried to buy a gun illegally. And trying to sell one, there were only 1,500 prosecutions, which is only like 3 or 4% of the total number of times it happens. And the ones that did, most of them either pled down to lesser charges and misdemeanors, or they didn't serve any time. They were under house arrest. So all I'm saying, there are federal laws. I'm not saying we need new laws on this. I'm saying we need to put teeth in those laws. And yeah, anyway, there will always be a problem, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't make the effort to mitigate the guns. Yes. And I think we've overswung the pendulum on this. We're like so hurried about, and so like even right now, I have talked about a solution that only affects criminals negatively. It actually has a positive effect on if you're a gun owner. It makes it easier for you to get a gun. But somehow, like the reaction is just, oh, well, we're keeping the hands out of criminals. And it's like, unless you're a criminal, what are you worried about? If I had a gun, I'd get a CCW. I don't know what a CCW is. Are you trans? No. You need to clean the gun and use a gun range. You need to learn to clean the gun and use a gun range. I learned how to use a gun range when I was in the military. I mean, it's not like anybody that's like wants to keep the hands out of criminals has never fired a gun before. Having federal laws doesn't matter when people from other states buy guns, trafficking guns to states with really strict laws. It's common all the time. All the guns in Mexico. Yeah, isn't that funny? We're worried about them bringing fentanyl up here, but we've got guns going down there. I'm for the Second Amendment. I hate gun laws. Okay, do you think criminals should buy guns? I mean, I just want to ask. Do you think that like a terrorist should be able to buy a gun? Like, because I'm not talking about law-abiding citizens not having guns. I've pretty specifically said that at least a dozen times. Okay, so the simple answer is actually to enforce. No, the simple answer is not just to enforce the law. The simple answer is to put teeth in the law. Right now, there's just not enough actual repercussions for breaking it. It's not just enforcing it. it's making it so that the law becomes a deterrent, so that if and to also shift the onus from the gun buyer to the gun owner. So, like, I can come to you as a felon, and I'm not a felon, but hypothetically, let's say you're selling a gun on Craigslist, and I want to go buy a gun, and I see your Craigslist ad, and so I go and I talk to you, and I buy your gun, and you say, "Are you a felon?" And I say, "No, I'm not a felon." And you say, "Okay," and then you sell me your gun. In some states, this is legal. In some cases, some states, it's not. But you sell me your gun. I am breaking a federal law. You are not breaking a federal law. Unless you know for a fact I'm felon or have reason to believe it. If I look like an honest guy, I pull up in my Nissan Leaf, and I'm not, like I'm not all decked out in gang gear or whatever. I just look like your typical cisgender middle-aged white guy. And so you have no reason to believe I'm a felon. And so you just sell me your gun. You haven't broken any laws. And it's not really fair of you to like do a background check on me, right? So how can we make it so that for you can be responsible to make sure that I am not a felon before you sell me the gun? I have to show you my ID. I have to show you this thing that says I have cleared a background check. Then you confirm that through the updated database. You type in the number and it shows me your picture, or it shows you my picture, and you say, "Yep, you're that ugly looking white guy." And so then you sell me the gun. Or you say, "Oh, no, that doesn't look like you. You don't look like an Asian girl." Then you say, "No, I can't sell you this gun. This ID doesn't match you." So I'm putting the burden on you to determine that the person you're selling the gun to has passed a background check. That's all it does. When you sell your gun, you have to make sure that it's being sold to somebody that's legal. I'm just saying criminals don't abide by laws. Right. So why are you asking them to be the ones that are responsible for maintaining it? Shouldn't the person that abides by laws be the one responsible for maintaining it? So when you're talking about the transaction between the person buying the gun and the person selling the gun, who do you think should be responsible to make sure that they're a criminal? The criminal or the law-abiding person? Who should be responsible for making sure that person is law-abiding? I think terrorists don't. Yes, that's why you shouldn't give them the gun. So you want a grandma to not have a gun to protect? No. If grandma passes a gun check, background check, she can have a gun. If libs had, so it seems like are you a bot or are you a real person? Because you don't seem to be responding to anything. Yes, I have a Nissan Leaf. It's the first brand new car I ever got. It was the first car I ever bought brand new. And when I first got it, I got in, I started it up, and you might say I turned over a new leaf. See, it is the Pun Show. Nobody is believing you aren't a diaper sniper. Okay. Stop the clap. Stop the cap. I don't know what the cap is. You have the option to transfer a. Yes, so that's the thing, is all guns that would be sold would have this requirement. You have to type in the ID, and then the ID has to like clear and before you sell the gun. So the pawn shop, anybody that sells the gun has to make sure that the person they are selling it to can legally buy it. Costs $25. Whatever they charge is fine as long as you've cleared the background check. Only decent gun broker would take one look at you and go, "Nah, This dude got diaper on the breath. Okay. Stop letting politicians and shills control this conversation or expect the status quo. I think this is honestly, and I think this is maybe indicative of what I believe is you have a conversation that's driven by people on the far right and on the far left. On the far left, you have people that want to ban guns. And on the far right, you just have people that have a knee jerk response that any gun control is bad. I think most of us agree, like most reasonable people would say, if you're a law abiding citizen, you should be able to have guns. If you're a criminal, you shouldn't be able to have guns. Like, I think that is the normal position. And I think that that is not the normal conversation we have. I wish we could have conversations like I'm trying to have right now, like offer solutions. How can we keep the hands out of criminals without taking them out of the hands of people like this dude? You know, I don't want to take your guns away. I want you to be able to have guns. But I don't want criminals to have guns, and I don't know why it has to be a choice. There he is. It's a bot. Somebody says he's a bot. I don't know if bots need. Okay, then respond to it. Do you agree that criminals should have guns or not? Do you want it to make it? Do you want, as a responsible gun owner and a real person, would you rather have it be easier or harder for you to buy guns? I want to make it easier for you to buy guns. Bots think this is a monetized channel, so I can't swear, which is why I'm glossing over some of the adjectives. Bots think liberals are totally against people owning guns, and we're not. And a lot of liberals own guns. I don't own guns because I don't want to. I think, the Second Amendment should also mean you don't have to own a gun if you don't want to. How many guns used in crimes from private sales? As I said before, 92%. Well, depending on what you mean by private sales. 8% of the guns that were purchased from the, like that, it was like the initial owner. 92% were sold to somebody at some point, whether it's 2 or 3 times or whatever. And every subsequent sale is considered a private sale, even if it's like a black market sale or whatever. And the idea, it would be like, once to buy a gun, you have to clear the thing. And so then you become responsible for that gun. So that closes 100% of those guns. Any gun that is sold, you would have to clear a background check for. Wouldn't matter if it was a private sale or if it was a public sale. Red tape? No, it wouldn't be red tape. It would be 5 minutes. It would be punching in a number. It would actually make it quicker and easier. The sadness on the dude's face, he knows. I don't know what you're onto. I don't think you have any substance. What about just independence? I don't know if you mean voter independence or if I don't know if you mean independence like independence as in Independence Day. Like, and what about independence? I have no idea what that question means. I think that criminals should not have guns, and I think law-abiding people should. I think law-abiding people includes independents. I think that law-abiding people includes Republicans. I think law-abiding people includes Democrats. Over 70% of guns recovered went from recovered by the ATF went from a dealer directly and went through a background check. So if this isn't a helpful push, okay, I would just say your numbers are wrong. This is not true. That's not true. What's up, my fellow freaks of nature? If they have a gun, I want to have a gun. Okay. I don't have a problem with you having a gun. No criminals is a general term, and some people are prosecuted for crimes they didn't commit. Okay. Not sure not every crime prevents you from owning a gun. And so I don't know. Somebody's convicted of anyway. So like if you're just like saying that anybody that wants to buy a gun should be able to buy a gun, that's your opinion. I disagree with it. But I would not say that you're not allowed to buy a gun. I would say that criminals shouldn't be allowed to buy guns, or violent criminals, if you want to get specific. MAGA is a cult and a terrorist organization. Actually, you know what his answer would be? His answer would be gun control. If they had gun control in 1776 and 1786. The Second Amendment was ratified in 1791. The first two laws that were passed afterwards were the First and Second Militia Act, which were put down insurrections. Shortly thereafter, George Washington led the militia to put down an insurrection. There were gun control laws all over the colonies. Black people weren't allowed to have guns. Indians weren't allowed to have guns. Lots of people weren't allowed to have guns. People that did have guns, there were open carry laws. There were laws against open carry, or against concealed carry. I'm sorry. There were laws that said where you could take your guns. There were laws about where you could store your guns. The notion that the founding fathers did not have gun control is just ahistorical and easily debunked. So Thomas Jefferson would be like, "Why are you talking about me?" The independent party. There is no independent party. Or are you talking about the Libertarian Party? I don't know. And left or right is not about a party. It's about a political leaning. Okay, man can't get 10 likes. Okay, any suggestions that don't impact lawful gun owners? Yes. Have I made any suggestions that do impact lawful gun owners? The only impact on lawful gun owners is it makes it easier for lawful gun owners to own guns. You don't want me to sing. That is not one of them. I've been paid to sing in other places. And by that I mean like people will give me money to go sing some other place. Guns brought my freedom. Guns are right. A woman that speaketh her mind and a witch. Then you'd hear several loud booms. Did you mean? Oh, is that what Thomas Jefferson would say? Do you mean specifically felons? I mean violent criminals. And in certain cases, like where there have been noticeable red flags, like a domestic abuser that's got divorce and a restraining order. And I think that those things would have to be signed off by, like a judge would have to sign a warrant. I think that there should be serious judicial review before you do it. But I also think that, like women should not have to be living in fear for their life because they divorced their husband. And I think that there are like plenty of cases where people have been murdered because there weren't these things. So there, like, the other side of it is like people have a right to breathe and shouldn't have to like be put in a place where they have to decide whether to murder their ex-husband or be murdered by their ex-husband. We've compromised for over a century. We've given, I don't, how old are you? Okay. That's just a lot of NRA blah blah blah. You're not sacrificing anything. I will just say that. Like the rest of it is too weird to get into. But I'm not asking you. What am I asking you to sacrifice? Um, no, the Second Amendment says nothing about permits. The Second Amendment was not meant like I talked about the Second Amendment yesterday. I'm not going to go back into it today. But the Second Amendment was not like written as the totality of all gun laws. If they didn't have gun control, why did they have gun control? Yes, people kill people. Guns don't kill people, people do. So why do we want to give people that kill people guns? Like, why is it like you think that's some sort of like gotcha? You're just owning yourself. All I'm saying is, okay, yes, people kill people. So the people that kill people, let's not give them guns to kill people. If you truly care and truly want some progress, then push for school security. Whenever, like, almost every time you see a school shooting where there's a school guard there with an armed school guard, the first person killed is the guard. This is like something that Donald Trump spouted off one time, and so now it's become the talking point from the right. This is just, it is not helpful. There's no anything that indicates that school guards, having armed school guards, has any use in shooting. The end up usually, what happens is these guys have, like, they've got all this body armor and stuff, and the security guard has a little handgun, and he's the first one that's killed, and then the shooter has another gun. Nerd, thank you. Okay, I don't have a gun, but if I do I don't think whether you keep your bullets locked up is relevant. So if we should, I didn't say we should ban guns. Libertarian Party is a joke. Guns are beautiful things. I hate to see your Pornhub history. Responsible gun owners aren't the ones we need to worry about. Right. That's why I'm saying make them responsible for the gun owners. Guns they own. Let's just keep the guns in the hands of responsible gun owners. We cool with that? Can you just say, I think only responsible gun owners should have guns? Like, as I do. I think only responsible gun owners should have guns. Do you agree with that? Yes or no? But I don't know. Should be like the cars need to pass license. They're like I don't know where I fall on that. I think you're talking about like a safety class or something like that, and you have to like pass a test that you understand how it's done. A lot of that, like, and then people say, well, I've been around guns my whole life. I know how to set, then the gun, they end up shooting themselves in the foot 3 days later. I think there needs to be more gun control. The amount of time I've been threatened in a school with gun violence because I'm trans. Oh, I'm sorry. That, I'm really sorry. Like that really makes me sad. My nephew is trans, and the trans community, I really feel for you guys. Guns are fine. It's mental health issues that's the problem. Okay, so let's keep the guns away from the people that have mental health issues then. Like, I don't understand. Like, I am not promoting an anti-gun argument here. And I'm not promoting that people with, you know, responsible gun owners, like I keep saying, let responsible gun owners have guns. Let's keep them out of the dangerous people's hands. I don't know how you made the thing teal. That's kind of cool. Legalize. I don't know what that is or what that means. Sadie, I don't know what that means. People had common sense back then. Well, not really. They like own people, dude. I do myself with substance abuse. I don't need a gun. Side note, you research Mock versus Garland. No, I'm not gonna be your little monkey. If you ban SSR, okay, that's an opinion. The anti-trans people are not welcome here. So we won't be hearing from that person anymore. We've tried school security, but why does it even have to? Okay, why does it have to be one or the other? Why do we have to like have more school shootings before we say, hey, let's keep the hands out of criminals? Why does it need to be that we can't do the thing that might work? Instead, we have to keep doing the thing that we know doesn't work. There is no infringement. How are you being infringed? What is the infringement? You keep saying things that indicate you're not listening. I'm responding to your arguments. You are not hearing the things I'm saying. What infringement? Please tell me what infringement. Tell me one thing that is an inconvenience to you if criminals don't have guns. And why is that relevant? I'm not talking about keeping guns away from honest, ordinary people. You're gonna hurt some. So you're gonna. Okay, I'm sorry. You're gonna hurt somebody with a car before you hurt them with. I don't think that's actually true. Because what you're not factoring into that is usage rates. If everybody used guns as much and as often as they use cars, there would be a lot more people shot. We got an ooh here. I don't know what the ooh. I love oak. Okay. Have open carry laws, have conceal laws. The founding fathers didn't. I'm not talking about taking those away. I'm saying don't let criminals have guns. Who's asking for more gun control? Do you think criminals should have guns? Mentally deranged, more like, I don't know. It was saving lives, security. You're acting like this is like true and past tense. Like you don't think that there's still security guards in schools? I live in Texas, dude. The first guy they shot was the security guard. Uh, well, that's between you and your wife. Most schools have cops anyway. Hello. Hi. Oh, I think I've seen you before. Uh, you saying I'm saying whether security works is irrelevant. I'm saying if the security is there and nobody comes in with a gun because they weren't able to get a gun, then what's the point of, why do we need to have that discussion? Why not keep the guns out of the people that are going to do the shooting? Um Depends on why it hurts. Okay. Yesterday, if you yeah, because I don't like really care what you're trying to like. If I had to Google and research every weird bit of MAGA disinformation, I would spend my whole life just chasing down nonsense. Who won the 2020 election? It's that you are not a credible person. You're not a credible enough person to even entertain with your like weird little Biden tried to steal your guns conspiracy. Okay. How about putting I think we should. That's actually part of what I'm saying. You have barely anybody that buys a gun that's a criminal going to jail for it. So let's put them in jail for it. That's part of my whole solution here. Why is it that you think that keeping guns away from criminals and putting criminals in jail are mutually exclusive things? Do you think criminals in jail have guns? Yes, and yet they still get them. So don't you think that it is a responsible thing to do to look at how and try to find a way to prevent that from happening? Again, I'm not trying to prevent you from having a gun. I'm trying to prevent criminals from having a gun. You're saying, "Oh yeah, criminals have guns," is not a rebuttal to I don't think criminals should have guns. Do you have a better solution? How do you think we should keep criminals? You don't think Do you think criminals should have guns or not? Okay. My gun is in my pocket. If you personally can remove it from me, I'll agree to never own another gun. Son, that's not your gun. Guns should not be allowed in school. I agree. Um, Lenny Bruce was not afraid. I agree, Paisley. Okay, UNC. What is UNC? I don't know what UNC is. Paisley is very, very much about UNC. Mm. You a Tar Heels fan? It's fine. You know best. I do know what I know. Um, yeah, but people like how many like imagine that you lived in whatever Chicago. Everybody went out on 90 and 94 and just started shooting each other, started firing off their guns from 5 to 8 p.m. or 3 to 6 p.m. or whatever it is. And just like hundreds of thousand people just shooting guns. Do you think gun deaths might go up? Like the car usage is much more ubiquitous than gun usage. So saying there are more car deaths or as many car deaths as gun deaths is a false equivalence. Because of course you're gonna. I mean, you have millions and millions, like hundreds of millions of people driving cars every day for hours a day. You don't have hundreds of millions of people driving a car for hours a day. Did you see the FBI release documents about Kringus McDingleberry? No, nor do I know who Kringus McDingleberry is. Have a hunch that it's not a real person. You're still going on Mock vs. Garland. And we still got, I don't, what is UNC? You look like bus stop prison tang. Okay. I'm a little confused why you are asking for here. I'm a little confused what you are asking for here. No one thinks criminals should have weapons, and we have an entire agency and laws for that purpose. Okay. This is the first time you've commented. I don't know how long you've been here, but I went through a whole thing addressing what I think would be a way to keep the guns out of criminals' hands. And I've had an incessant cascade of replies saying, don't take away my guns, when I have never once said anything about taking away guns. I am trying to talk about how we keep the guns away from criminals. Not talking about how we keep the guns away from like people that are law-abiding citizens. My idea is that you have a card that has a background ID on it. And if you buy a gun, you have to enter that ID. The person that sells it has to enter that ID to confirm that you've cleared a background check. And they have to do that before they sell you the gun. That way, we're shifting the onus of abiding by the law from the criminal to the law-abiding citizen. Once that ID clears, they can legally sell you the gun. Then you become the legal owner of that gun, so we can know who owns that gun. This is how we get rid of 93% of the guns that are purchased in crimes. So I'm trying to look at practical, realistic ways to keep the guns away from criminals without infringing on the rights of law-abiding citizens. The beauty of this is it actually makes it easier for law-abiding citizens to get a gun, because all they have to do is present their ID and they can get a gun within a couple of minutes. It actually reduces the amount of paperwork that they have to fill out. Who allows guns at school? If criminals, you people, carried them, they wouldn't be so brave. Okay. Again, this is like really irrelevant. I'm not, if criminals didn't have guns, you wouldn't have to worry about them. I think you should get a gun once you graduate from jail. Better. Okay. Thank you. Yes. And I think we need to fund the agency better. Like, we have like 200,000 or 300,000. There's something called the Charleston waiver, because it's what's his name? What happened with him? Not the waiver. I forget the exceptioner. You get 3 days to finish the background check. If they're not done with it, the owner can sell you the gun anyway. And so you have people that would have failed background checks that end up buying the guns from gun stores legally, that would not have been able to buy them if the background check had completed. And the reason background checks aren't being completed is because the agency is understaffed. So I'm saying, like, one thing we can do is staff the agency better so that we can process the background checks quicker, so that there are fewer illegal sales. And then that, like with my idea where you have it one that's already cleared, then there's not like a backlog. The logic of anti-gun scumbags. Mass shooting went away when assault rifles were banned. They came pretty. They certainly went down. I think that there's some correlation there. I think there's also every time there's a mass shooting, the gun industry uses that to tell people that the Democrats are going to come take away your guns. So there's always a mass surge in sales. And right after a mass shooting, a bunch of people go out and buy guns. And there are Americans own 46% of the privately owned guns in the world. Of those 46%, and that's, we're talking guns here. We're not talking people. 46% of guns, half of them are owned by just a few, like 3% of Americans. So 3% of Americans own 23% of the guns in the entire world. That's like 0.1% of the world's population owns 23% of the guns in the entire world. And we want to make it out that the real problem is that there aren't enough guns here. Even though we're all the first world nations, we have the biggest gun problem. We have the highest murder rate. What if everybody in the world went outside and shot a gun in the same time in the opposite direction of the spin on the earth? There would probably be a lot of dead people. So you're arguing common sense rules then. You need a license to... Yeah, I'm just arguing common sense rules. And in terms of that license, and if you missed it earlier, the whole idea would be that there would be an independent agency that would take care of it. Everything would be encrypted, and the only way you could access that database would be if you had a federal warrant for a specific registered weapon, and then you could only get the information about the person that owns that gun. There'd be no way that anybody could ever get any information for anybody without a federal warrant, and not like a group of people, or like you could never go and get all the people in California. You'd have to enter the IDs one at a time. Right. I'm just not getting distracted by this other thing. Have you? Okay. UNC. Okay. Winch side isn't having kids. That's only because of immigration, actually. Well, actually, I think without immigration, the population is more or less stagnated, and we're almost to the point where it's going to start going down. And I'm not talking about illegal immigration. I'm talking about legal immigration, or legal immigration, not illegal immigration. Is the only reason the population is climbing right now. You won't keep criminals from... Yeah. You won't stop criminals from committing crimes. So why have laws? Yeah, we've covered all this. And there are, this is what's there. You do not, again, most guns that are used in crimes are not you don't need a background check for. You only have to use to clear the background check, depending on what state you live in. You only have to clear the background check if you're buying it from a federally approved gun store. Most states you can buy a gun secondhand. There's gift exceptions. There's also like people can sell them on the black market or buy them on the black market. So I would just like, rather than me go through all that for like the fifth time, go back and watch like the first 30 minutes or even the 10 through 20 minutes. I cover all that. The problem is criminals are law-abiding citizens until they break the law. Right. So, but not all criminals are committing their first offense. The typically what in a word, violent criminals. Well said. Well, has any? I mean, like, we currently have laws. Like, I wouldn't change what the current laws are regarding background checks in terms of who is and isn't eligible. No, and but in essence, this is what we are asking people to do. We are putting the responsibility on gun owners or on the purchaser, not the seller. All guns, when they're first sold from the manufacturer, are sold legally. So if every time it's sold, we make sure that the person who legally bought it is selling it to somebody who can legally buy it, then we eliminate so many illegal purchases by criminals. We're putting the onus on the seller, not the buyer. Right now, a lot of states don't have any laws about it at all. The federal law isn't enforced, and there's no teeth in it. The whole point of what I'm trying to say is let's stop asking criminals to be honest and start asking responsible gun owners to be responsible for their guns. Yes, I am all right. I'm assuming you didn't hear this, what I had said 5 times now when you wrote this. They should do background checks to see if people look cool enough while holding a firearm. Ted Cruz would fail. Stop blaming guns for the actions of criminals. I'm not blaming guns for the actions of criminals. I'm literally not doing that. I don't understand why that is an argument here. No, it is not complete bull. Like just saying it's complete, it is not. I just verified that today. Like, look it up. I don't know what to tell you. There were like 237,000 people that bought guns last year that would have failed a background check because the background check was late. It's important to thoroughly vet gun purchases by seeing if you just lost the game. Well, does that mean we're not going to be seeing UNC anymore? There is a backlog of ATF special forms, not standard purchases. Well, whatever. People are buying guns that shouldn't be able to. That weird stuff again. Do you think pineapple is an acceptable pizza topping? I think that anybody that wants to have a pizza should be able to have whatever they want on it. I am a pizza libertarian. I've been to 34 countries. I've lived in 5. I've had many different kinds of pizza, and some of them are weird. I've had squid on a pizza in Taiwan. I've had ketchup on a pizza in Brazil. I've had much weirder things than pineapple on pizza. Okay, somebody using a tard word. Okay, here's one for you, John. What if everybody in the world bent over and farted in the same direction? Would that reverse the rotation of the Earth? All right. I'm sorry, there are so many people here who want the trolls or the comments and not carry serious. I appreciate that you are trying to have an honest conversation, and I recognize that. Which is why I'm trying to, explain. I've gone through this several times. The problem is there. I'll just briefly summarize it. The problem is twofold. One, the laws we have are not being enforced. Very few people are prosecuted for things like the two main ways that criminals get guns are either they buy them or they steal them. The There's like 65,000 a year that are stolen, or I'm sorry, 265,000 a year, 65,000 times a year that is not reported. Like stolen guns aren't reported, and the 92% of them are not, of the guns that are used in crimes are not the initial purchase of it. They're not traced back to the person that bought the gun. Like the person that used it in the crime is not the person that bought it from the gun store. So that means only 8% of the guns that are used in them at the gun store. That doesn't mean that only 8% of people that, these are just the ones that you used in crimes, right? So don't get the math weirded out. But how do we keep that? So all of those guns that were initially legally purchased from a gun store by a law-abiding citizen, how did they go from being in the hands of being a law-abiding citizen to being in the hands of the criminal? That's the thing we need to look at. There was a transaction somewhere. And certain percentage of the time they were stolen. I think 6 to 7% of the time they were found, usually at the scene of the crime. So, like, in the Olvati shooting, the guy used the security guard's gun to do some shootings, right? So, like, that was not a crime. Like, that gun was initially legally purchased and found at the scene of the crime. But so, like, 7 plus 6%, that's 83. It's the 13%. So, like, you're talking about 80% of guns that are used at crimes were bought by someone that was not the initial purchaser, and they were purchased from somebody at a black market, through a friend, through a straw purchase. In some way they bought it from somebody else who bought it legally, or they bought it from somebody who bought it from somebody who bought it legally. There's a chain of ownership from the person who bought it legally to the criminal. What I'm saying is we monitor that chain. Every time there's a transaction with that gun, we keep track of it. And we make sure that every single time that gun is sold, it is purchased by somebody who can purchase it legally. And to ensure that that happens, we make it as unintrusive as possible. You show somebody this ID, they punch in the number on their phone, it comes up, you verify that the person that has that ID is right, you both do an e-signature, and you sell the gun. Make it really easy to sell the gun, you make it really easy to buy the gun. Unless they're not qualified to buy it, in which case you tell them no. It's that simple. At some point, that chain breaks. That chain from legal gun owner to illegal gun owner breaks because you can't make that transaction. And you have to account for the gun you own. If you sold somebody a gun and you didn't have that transaction in it, you're still responsible for any crimes committed by that gun. So it puts the onus on the honest gun owner. They're making sure that they are not selling the gun to somebody that can't own it. You're making the law-abiding person responsible for abiding by the law. What we have right now is a system where somebody can just lie and still sell a gun. We have like plausible deniability. You can't knowingly sell somebody a gun that you know can't buy a gun, but you have no obligation to check and make sure they're telling the truth. You have no obligation to verify it. I think there are some states where there are some laws along those lines, but not along those lines. That's where most of your illegal transactions happen. And it's not just at gun shows, and it's not just people on Craigslist. It's a combination of all of those things. And if you want to, like, I'll show this again. I'll just drop this link in here. And it up at the top, it has how all of those transactions happen. So anyway, I hope that explains it. Okay, that doesn't really address anything. Saying common sense doesn't make it so. I know. Saying it's not common sense, just denying it's common sense doesn't mean it's not common sense. I have a logic that I laid out. Address the logic. He said he is strong. The American people could wage wars against nations, but what the founding fathers planned for, nothing could and control the people's rights. I want to make sure no matter what people say, the American people could wage whole wars against nations. But that's what the founding fathers planned for. So nothing could enslave, I think he means enslave, or control the people's rights. I cannot believe that somebody, if I can't, I can't be reading this accurately. I'm going to assume that you're not trying to say that the founding fathers wanted to make sure that people couldn't be enslaved. Because I'm pretty sure that's wrong. And if you think about it, you probably see where. Congratulations. I think the biggest barrier to sensible gun control is Michigan's Gate Corn Act. What do you think? I don't know what Michigan's Gate Corn Act is. Oh, Gate Corn Act. Okay. The people who are anti-gun are the ones. Who's anti-gun? Yes, they are. Nobody's saying make them illegal. Somebody's saying, I'm saying, put teeth in it so that when people sell things on the black, or sell guns on the black market, they go to jail for it. We have beautiful stats like states like Ohio where I can manufacture. Oh, I think there's a side discussion on like pot laws or something. And the sellers are liable if they sell to someone who cannot legally buy it. I'm fine with closing the private sales here in Wisconsin. I think we need, I think it needs to be federal. We need to just have a federal law because it's, too easy to drive. Like people have cars. Uh, oh, I know on your my comment was directed at those who keep putting words in your mouth. Okay, thanks. Anyway, I was just gonna pop on for an hour, and now I have to pee. Anyway, I showed up. I gave you my solution. You're welcome to think of it what you will, but I have a feeling that too few are even going to think of it as all. Think of it at all. But I do like I think just doesn't hurt any gun owners, and it prevents some gun criminals from owning guns. I don't understand why that is controversial to anybody. But there we go. I hope you have a wonderful evening. It is 7 o'clock. Oh my goodness. All right. Have an exceptional evening, y'all. Thanks for watching.